Hello everyone and welcome to PolyCosm. My name is Omercan and today I'll be taking you through the creation for the Jellyfier weapon concept. Before you begin any concept design project, it's very useful to have a clear brief to guide your design. Now, if you are working for a client or in a studio environment, you would have a brief with very specific needs. But if you are doing this just for yourself, for your portfolio, then just try and take some time to write down a quick brief for yourself. This will help you stay on track and not get distracted by other irrelevant ideas. For the Jellyfier weapon concept, we wanted to create a nautical-themed science fiction weapon that is probably going to be designed for a video game, although not strictly limited to that. One of the main elements in this weapon design we wanted to have is this jellyfish-like alien creature that is contained in a small container, and it can be attached or detached from the weapon, and it sort of powers the weapon up or something like that. Again, nothing super defined, just enough information for us to get started. It is also useful to think about the visual style, the design language that you want to follow. In this case, we were inspired by games like BioShock and Borderlands, and we wanted to keep in mind the design aesthetic of these games as we are working on our Jellyfier weapon concept. The next step is to look for a reference. During this process, I suggest keeping an open mind and not limiting yourself too much at the very beginning. Once you have a good variety of references, it's time to get started. Okay, now I'm in Photoshop. I have a nice big old canvas open and I just start sketching away. I like starting with nice and flat side views. I think this helps me find a good design as quick as possible without getting into too much detail. Now, you'll notice that I'm a very messy sketcher, and that's just how I sketch. I have always been a messy sketcher. You know, you can see some other concept artists work with like really nice, clean, like silhouettes and shapes. And that's great, and I really envy them, and I just can't do that. I'm just a very messy sketcher. I really like working like this. It kind of helps me find all these like interesting little ideas, and you know, these happy little accidents start to happen once different marks and values start to overlay each other and I see these interesting shapes in there. Now, speaking of shapes, I try to keep things fairly abstract at the beginning. I'm not thinking too much about function when it comes to the weapon. I'm not thinking too much like this is a trigger, this is the magazine, and this is, you know, the stock, this is the nozzle of the gun or anything like that. But I'm trying to find interesting shapes. That's what I mean when I say I'm keeping it abstract. I'm mostly focusing on some good shape design, things that fit and flow together really well, rather than focusing too much on the functionality of the weapon. For me, function follows form. Not always, but most of the time. I try to find interesting shapes, a cool design, and then try to come up with what the function of that design is. Since our brief didn't specify what kind of a weapon this is going to be, I'm playing around with different ideas. I'm trying different shapes, different sizes, different proportions. I'm just trying out a lot of different configurations and find interesting stuff. Now, as I'm working on this, of course, I have my Moodboard on the side on a second screen, and I'm constantly looking at my Moodboard as I'm sketching. This helps me stay on track, stick to the guidelines that I set myself at the very beginning, and I don't get distracted by ideas that, might be cool, but that might not fit this specific brief. Now, I have about 12 designs here, 12 side view sketches done. So, I take a break, I go for a walk, whatever, I come back and I take a look at them, and I decided to pick 3 that I really, really liked. And I put them on a separate layer, and you can see that I keep flicking back to the previous sketches because there were certain parts in some of the other sketches that I liked. Like some of the overall design didn't quite work for me, but there was like a shape in there, an idea that I quite liked. So I basically just cut that out, put it on another design, kitbash within my own designs. And, you can just do this, it's fine, it's your own design, it's something you've created, so you can cut and paste and manipulate what you just drew or painted as much as you like. And, I'm just doing this, I'm doing these little drawings sometimes on the side to clarify some of the ideas that I might have that are maybe not necessarily quite easily readable on the side view. So they're just like little notes that I make on the side. As you can see, I'm just spending some time refining these final 3 sketches, just clarifying some of the shapes, the edges, maybe looking into the value design of it as well, like certain parts of the weapon might be a darker value and other parts might be a lighter value. I'm making those final decisions and clarifying these last 3 designs before I decide on one final one to, take to a final finish. And in this part, usually I would, if I was working on a client commission, I would send this off to the client for feedback. And obviously right now, this is a personal project between me and Christina, so there's no client. But I have been occasionally sending some of these thumbnails to Christina to get her ideas, her feedback on it. Because she's the one who is going to take one of these, the final one. She's going to take the final one into 3D and create a basic block mesh out of it. So her opinion matters to me a lot. If you are working in a studio environment, of course, you would be getting this kind of feedback from an art director, you might be getting it from the 3D modeler, the sculptor. But if you are working on a personal project, strictly for your portfolio, then it's totally up to you. Okay, I've sent the final 3 sketches to Christina, and she picked the handgun one, which I really like that one as well. So we decided to take this concept to a final. I've been really wanting to put a sextant shape into these designs since the very beginning. As I was doing my research, I came across, sextants, people use these for navigation on ships. It's this device that you look through the scope and it helps you measure the angular distance between 2 objects. And they look really interesting. I wanted to have this shape in one of the designs, and I struggled with it for a while, but I think I pulled it off with this handgun concept. And I decided to add a scope to it because sextants usually have a scope attached to them. I thought it would be a quite cool idea to have this sextant scope attached right next to the grip So if this was for a video game or something like that, you could look through and measure the distance and know how to like angle your gun before firing it. And now I'm just basically refining this final concept sketch. This part is just refining and tightening, cleaning up. Again, I mentioned at the beginning that I'm a messy sketcher, so, you know, at this stage I try to spend a good amount of time cleaning up. After I spend some time refining the side view, I extend my canvas and I start working on the top view, and after this I'm going to start also working on a front view. This should give Christina enough information so she can create the 3D block mesh in Blender later on. This part can take a considerable amount of energy because it can be quite difficult to visualize something that you drew only on side view and try to figure out, you know, how it's going to look from the top or from the front or from this and that angle. It can take up some practice to get very comfortable with creating orthographic views. I use a lot of guidelines, these red and blue lines that you can see that I'm drawing, to make sure, you know, things are lining up perfectly or near perfectly, perfect enough. I just need to make sure that the information on this page is clear enough for Christina to be able to work with. I'm sure you've noticed that the whole time I try to stay zoomed out as much as I can, because in this stage I don't want to get into small details. It's not about the small finer details and those super refinements. You know, I'm trying to still leave certain things a little bit loose, a little bit vague, because this will give Christina some chance to put in her own creative ideas as well. After she's done with the rough 3D base model, I'm going to take over and draw over it, add some further details, and then send that back to her. This way we can bounce ideas between us and come up with some really cool designs. And here I decided to do a very quick sketch to explain how the reel at the bottom of the gun looks like from the other angle. And here we are. This is the final orthographic view of the Jellyfier. Now I hand over this sketch to Christina, and she's going to use this as reference when she's creating the base 3D block mesh in Blender. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and please like this video and share it with others, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.